I had a heart attack and died. I was standing beside the bed, looking down at my lifeless body. The whole earth is starting to disappear. And as I enter this tunnel, I see that I'm getting closer and closer to this light. In the center of this light, I see the form of a man. I'm sorry, this is going to happen again. It happens every time. I'm sorry.
Wayne Fowler, you died from a heart attack, and what you saw and heard is life-changing. And I love how you talk about that the afterlife is more real than what we see here.
Well, to give you a little bit of context, Janie, at this time, I'm just right at 27 years old. And I'm in what I think is probably the best shape of my life. I was kind of, I was very gung-ho, military oriented, and that sort of thing. And so I started to feel a little fluish, and I didn't feel quite right. I was just kind of like starting to get a little cold sweat, and I started to have I was having difficulty breathing and walking. It seemed labored to me. I thought I was getting the flu or something. But it progressed and it got worse throughout the day. Then I started having this pain going down my left arm. And under any other circumstances in anybody else, you would think people are thinking like, boy, you better get yourself to the hospital because it sounds like you might be heading to heart attack city, right? However, not only did I not think about that, because like I said, no, I mean, I'm young, there's not that, no, and neither did Denise. It was actually the last thing we would have thought about. Again, I just thought, man, I'm just feeling really bad. Now, considering just the week before, because I had gone through having the chicken pox and I was in a bad state there, I thought, maybe it's just something else, another flu, that type of thing. But this pain down my arm started throbbing. It was just, and it was not anything I had been used to experiencing before. So I was telling Denise, I told her, I said, baby, I'm going to turn in early. I'm just really not feeling well. And she said, okay, I'll be in there with you in just a minute. I said, no. Take your time. You don't have to. But I've got to lay down. I feel weak. And she said, no, that's okay. I want to. I said, well, okay, I'm going to go ahead and go now. You just come in when you're ready. And so I went in the room and I just climbed into bed. I just felt like I had no strength, having a hard time breathing, getting air into my lungs and that sort of thing, and very uncomfortable. And the cold sweat and everything else. I'm going like, man, this is not right. So I actually expected, well, why don't I have a fever? What's the deal with the cold sweat? I was just trying to just go through why is this like this? Denise comes in about this time, and what she does is she gets ready for bed and she crawls in next to me. And at first, she realizes that I'm kind of restless there, trying to get comfortable, and I'm unable to do so. So what she does is she turns over on her right-hand side with her back up against me. And it seemed like almost instantly, which it was always something that she did, and I never understood how she could do it. She could fall asleep at the drop of a hat. And I always quipped that I slept like a Vietnam vet. So, I'm always quick to wake up, hard to fall asleep, but she, man, just out. And but in this particular instance, I was really glad that she did, because I didn't want to affect her sleep with me feeling bad and being all over the place trying to get comfortable. And so what I did is I couldn't get comfortable, so I then lay on my back and I try to stretch my neck out, see if I can get some air into my lungs. And I'm thinking like, man, what is this? And then all of a sudden, it felt like an elephant just stomped right in the middle of my chest, completely unexpected. And it caught me so unawares. I grabbed my chest and I just came up slightly on the, on the bed. And it was in response to this pain, which was amazingly bad. And and it was in fact so bad I couldn't say anything. I wanted to try to reach over and catch Denise, wake her up, to say something to her, to catch her attention, but I couldn't do it. This pain had me gripped so tightly that it was like the words or even sound itself was caught in my throat. I just couldn't do it. And and it was so bad you couldn't move, because it was like this knife that was pinning you to your spot. It was at that point that I realized, and this is happening pretty quick, and so I'm thinking like, what can I do? And so the one thing that I realized that I can do is I can call out to God, because I've learned about this prayer thing, right? And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call out to God, and I do. And now this is in my mind because I can't make any sound, and I'm saying, God, God, you got to help me. And I said, if this pain is so bad, if you don't help me, I don't know what I'm going to do. And it was just a prayer of desperation, Janie. And but in that, just a couple of seconds later, after I make this prayer, then suddenly all the pain disappeared. It all went away. And now I'm sitting there with my eyes closed, and I'm thinking, oh, first there's this sense of relief, right? Because the pain had stopped. And then I'm kind of checking myself, and yeah, okay, it's really stopped. And I thought to myself, I think, hey, God heard me. He was listening to me. And I thought, that's amazing. Now I'm still here with my eyes closed, and I'm starting to kind of take stock, okay, well, the pain has stopped. But then I start to realize, well, wait a minute, that's not the only thing that stopped. I don't have any pain running down my arm. I'm not having any difficulty breathing. Nothing like what was happening before. In fact, I'm feeling kind of good. And it was at that moment that I thought to open my eyes. And when I did, Janie, I realized I wasn't in bed anymore. I was standing beside the bed, looking down at my lifeless body on the bed. And my first thought was, very matter of factly, I'm dead. And I knew it was me. I mean, there was no question in my mind. Yep, that's me. And then my next thought, and I don't look so good either. That's just my normal approach to things. And because here was this body with a hand clutching its chest and with his this kind of pained expression on his face. And I say that like it's the third person because I really at that point I felt like a third person. That was that body. This is me, Wayne. I knew it was my body, but it is no longer. It's dead. And and so, but then as I make that recognition too, I start looking around and I'm realizing, wait a minute, I can see this pretty well. And I didn't realize why that could be the case because, it was pretty dark there. And we had no lights on in the room. There's nothing like that. So it's actually quite dark. You wouldn't be able to see. But I was noticing that I was able to see very well, very well. And I'm taking in all of these details and I start looking around and checking things. And I realized that I could focus on something and I could just get all of this detail. And I thought, that's wow, that's cool. Uh, and right at that moment, as I make that realization and I'm looking around, I hear coming from behind me this voice. And this voice says, Wayne. And I stopped and I was actually like looking up. Did somebody, did I just hear my name called? Did somebody just call me? And then I heard it again, Wayne. And I realized it was coming from behind me. So I turned to look and see what was going on. And when I turned, I okay, so you have to understand. So I'm standing beside our bed, which is just a, a few feet from the wall, the exterior wall, which our bedroom on that exterior wall went to the outside. Okay, and there's this big window that is right there, and I can actually see through this window and I'm looking out. Now there's a street that passes behind us and there's a curb on the opposite side of the street. Uh, and I can see through the window, I can see this woman and she's sitting on this curb. Now, there's one thing that's really interesting here. So I'm looking out and I see her on the curb, and she appears like she's in a spotlight, this cone of light. If someone had shined a spotlight from directly over top of you, and you've got this circle of light around you, that's what I see her in. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, I know this person. There's this knowing that I had. And I said, who is that? Who is that? Oh, yeah, this is Linda. And I didn't know at that time, how could I know that? And who's Linda anyway? Because I didn't know a Linda at that time. And there was not a family friend, a relative, or something that I just didn't know. But at that moment, I knew that's who this was. And so what I did next, which also it seemed natural to do, was to walk out through the wall. Now I can actually say it because not only could I see things in the dark and make out all these details, but I could also see through the wall. It was as if I had this kind of superhero type vision that we don't have here on Earth. It was still vision, but it was multiplied many times, with abilities that you normally do not have. We don't have certain restrictions in the afterlife that we have here on the earth. So, like you see me wearing glasses now, and I wore glasses then, I didn't need them. And not only that, it was just like eagle eye vision with these other little perks, like being able to see through walls and other stuff like that. It seemed perfectly normal to me, as well as when I walked straight through the wall, just like that seemed perfectly normal to do too. There's nothing going to stop me. I just walked through the wall and I walked right out to Linda sitting there at the curb. And so when I get out there, I just said, hi. And she looked at me and she said, Wayne, there's someone who wants to meet you. And I said, really? Who? And she just looks up. And now, me, just like anybody else, I think would normally be the case. You see somebody looking up, well, then the first thought, think, well, what are they looking at? So you look up too. So that's what I did. So I looked up too. What did I see? I see this black velvety space with one little pinpoint of light that was directly over her. All the way up. It looks to me like it's a star, right? And that's what I thought. Oh, it's a star. Well, as soon as that thought had come to mind, I suddenly feel these giant hands grab me around my midsection. And now, of course, I didn't see these hands, but you could feel every part of them, every finger and thumb, and they were huge. It was just like it warm and nice. Although it caught me by surprise, it actually felt very comforting. And I started being lifted up off the ground. Well, that also caught me by surprise. And so the very first thing that I do is just like a cat. I throw out my arms to try to find something to brace myself on. Of course, there's nothing to brace myself on. I'm outside, right? And I don't see anything. And I see myself as I'm being lifted up. Well, I look, it appears as though Linda is going down away from me. But what actually is happening is I'm going up, and I realize that as I'm looking around. But then my eye looked over at my left hand, and I thought, wait a minute, what's that? As I look at my left hand, I notice that there's this light that's surrounding my hand and my arm. Excuse me. It's this bluish, purplish light. And as using this same vision, as I'm looking at this hand, my sight zooms in on it. Well, it's like semi-transparent or translucent, if you will. And I can see all of the veins and everything. It's part of Wayne's hand. I can tell it's me. But in this state, I noticed that all of the blood vessels don't have any blood in them. They have light in them. And that's what I like to say is it's me, only a light me, if you will. Now, there's also another point I need to make here, because it sounds like there's this long period of time that's going by. That it's like a few minutes go by here, a few minutes go by here, and so on and so forth in this linear progression of events. But that's only so I can tell you all of the things that I recognized during this afterlife experience. But they didn't happen like that. They happened super fast. In fact, so fast that one could almost, and I almost saw them as happening almost simultaneously. After this notice, and I'm seeing her going down, and I notice that I'm going up through the cloud layers and stuff like that. And I'm seeing just the whole earth is starting to disappear underneath me. And I'm taking all this in, and I'm just really awed by it. But then I suddenly realize after I'm getting out in space, I'm thinking like, well, Wayne, don't you want to know where you're going? So I decide that I'm going to like, hey, let's see where I'm going. And I turn my attention to the direction that I'm heading. And I'm going out into space, and I'm going deep out into space. And I notice in front of me what appears to be almost like a portal opening. It's what appears is like the funnel or like the bell of a trumpet that is opening up in front of me, and it's actually a tunnel. And I'm heading towards it, and heading up inside of this tunnel. And as I enter this tunnel, again, it seems like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. There's no fear. There's nothing like that. And it's more of awe, like these things that are happening. And I feel this breeze, this cool, gentle breeze that on the earth would be like, on the surface of your body, right? Like if you were outside, you get this gentle summer breeze, and it's kind of nice, right? This was different. This went through every part of my being, and it was just amazingly comforting, and everything that you could think about how nice something could feel. That's what it was. It was just this through every cell, every part of me. It was really, really nice. And then as I go in through, I've passed the bell, I've felt this breeze, and then what is lining the entire circumference of this tunnel? I'm guessing, if I had to make a guess, it's hard to be able to guess size, but I'm guessing maybe like 30 feet or in diameter or something like that, right? Maybe a little more. But around this circumference of it is lined, packed shoulder to shoulder, and how they're arranged there are angels. And now these angels, they had wings. They appeared to be like, now the wings are not outstretched or anything like that, but they have what appeared to be white wings that were folded back behind them. They're standing up over their shoulders, and they're very tall, very muscular. They're wearing this almost like an anodized blue etched armor that is like perfectly fit to their body. And each one has this particular etching that's like it's particular for them, right? And it's stunning, beautiful. And what I get from them is like they're military men, right? That's what it looked like. They're these military guys, very powerful and just awesome to look at. And as I had mentioned before, is I get this impression as I'm going up in there, they're all giddy, Janie. It's like they're they're being able to do something that like not all of us guys get to do. This is a special group that is there to welcome me for something like a welcoming procession, and they're excited about it. They're not only excited to be there, they're excited for me too, and I can feel that. I know that's what they're feeling, and I thought, huh, they're excited for me. I didn't know why, but I knew that they were, and I had this feeling, this impression or image that had come into my mind in thinking about it is like it was a military wedding procession. When you do the saber arch, if you're familiar with that. And what that is when you have a military wedding, then in instances where you have the saber arch, you have the bride and the groom start at the beginning, and all of the officers that line up and they take their sabers and they cross them over the top, making an archway for them to walk through. And it's quite an honor for the couple, and it's an honor for the man, from the respect from the rest of his officers and those types of things. And it's just a wonderful kind of stamp of approval, if you will, privilege and an honor to be able to do that. And it's something that they would remember, right? It's a big deal. And that's what I was feeling like that as I'm going through this tunnel, except that it's not an arch. They're completely surrounding the whole circumference of this tunnel as far as I can see. And I'm just like taking things in. Now, at this same time, remember, almost simultaneous, I'm starting to pick up speed, and I'm getting faster and faster and faster till the point that I recognize that I'm going faster than the speed of light. Now, one thing you have to understand is that you don't immediately suddenly have all knowledge of everything, that when you die, you're the same person just a few minutes after death that you were a few minutes before death, right? So, me coming from an engineering background, I'm thinking like, you can't do that. The speed of light is a stop sign. You can't go faster than that. And so I started to get a little uncomfortable. And as soon as I felt that level of discomfort, I start to slow down. Just enough to where I'm going like, okay, I can take that, and I continue on. And I start taking in some more detail around me in the spaces between the angels as I can look through, and the tunnel wall is kind of transparent, semi-transparent, and so you can see these lights streaking by, just like it is on a Star Trek episode, right? As they're going shoo, 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 shoo. Well, I'm thinking that it's just like planets and galaxies and things that are streaking by. I've had other persons tell me that it was probably other angels. I don't know that's the case. At the time, I'm telling you that I thought it was uh, planets, galaxies, and those types of things that I see going by. It's okay either way, but that's what I see just going on. And then I turn my attention directly to the front, and I can see at the end of this tunnel that this pinpoint of light that I had thought all this time was this star. And I notice that I'm getting closer to it. And there's a couple of other things that I notice. And it is one, I can see this other funnel going the other direction, opening out this way. What it appears to be in a completely different realm, like it's a portal into another realm. Because I can see, space to left and to right, and you can see farther along space to the left and to the right. But in front of me is this different realm that appears to be covered almost with like a membrane or something that is over the top of it. And I'm getting closer and closer, and it's starting to grow in my field of vision. And so what happens is I'm just kind of like questioning, what is this? And then all of a sudden, Janie, I burst through this membrane like separation between this realm and that realm. And almost like being born, right? I'm being born into this new realm. It was like that was the breaking of the covering that was going to allow me to go into it. It was just really, really different. Uh, but it was physically and visually different as well, because as I burst through this clarity in this realm of light that I am now in, is super, even more so than what I had in my earthly realm when you're there on earth. Even though I have this super amazing clarity of vision and that sort of thing, this is many times even more. And I see that I'm getting closer and closer to this light, which I still think is a star, because I don't know better, right? And it is so bright. And I say, and I really believe that, it was brighter than 10,000 suns. But it was beautiful. It was this white, and white does not do it justice. It is this level of purity and white that does not exist here on this earth. If you and I'd always talked about how there's Sandy Patty has a line from a song that she does in which she talks about the purest holy white. That's the closest I could come to this purity, perfection. It was stunningly drawing me to it, and it was beautiful. And it didn't hurt my eyes at all. In fact, I loved looking at it. And I'm getting closer. Now, see, this is also one other difference, and I don't understand it yet. I will. But this light had a boundary to it. And I could, with that sight, I could separate it from the rest of the light. I don't know how, but I could. It was like an isolated, or this light had the ability to isolate itself, right? And it was a living light. You could feel the life in it coming from it, right? And I'm heading right for it, and I'm looking down into this light, uh, and I notice that in the center of this light, that I still thought was a star up to this point, I see the form of a man. And I realize that this is not a man that's in this light. The light was pouring out of the man. That's where the light came from. It was all pouring out of him. And that's the life that's pouring out of him. And I'm heading towards it, and he's got his arms outstretched. Now I can only see the form because this light is so bright you can't see anything else yet, okay? But you can see the arms outstretched and like they're reaching out for me to hug me. And as soon as that happens, there's this instant where I enter the light. And at that very same moment, the light also enters me. And I am beginning to be filled with the infinite love of God. And I'll tell you more about this as we go on. And so, as what's happening is this light, which is actually himself, is starting to fill me, and it's like I was a container, like a like a water balloon or some kind of container that can stretch, right? Except that's my whole body is actually this container, and it's being filled with this light, and it's being filled so much that it starts to expand me, the me that I know. Let me take a second to explain this experience of the love of God, though, because we have this word love in the English language, and it is so incredibly insufficient to describe what this is. If you were to gather all of the words that we have for love of family, love of spouse, love of friends, anything, all of that, right? And you combine it all together, all being a facet of this perfect diamond of love that we call love, and then multiply that times a billion with all of the ecstasy, all of the rapture, all of the joy, all of the just the level of excitement and wonder, and all of that all together times a billion. And Janie, the point of this is that's only one drop. It's only one drop. This is infinite. This is only one drop. And there's no way that you can experience that here on earth. When we are told that this is a shadow, it truly, truly is, because the reality compared to the shadow is so far beyond our ability to even explain it in words. We just don't have the words to say it. The Apostle Paul said that he was taken up to heaven and he saw things that it was not lawful to speak on. And I think that that's really the same thing. It's not that it was unlawful. That was the term that they used to be able to say, we just don't have words for it. He was seeing the very thing. I'd like to tell you guys, but I just don't have the words. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm telling you here. So he's filling me with that love. And I'm expanding and I'm expanding. And you can feel it. It's a palpable pressure, awesomely amazing pressure, up until the point that I think that I could explode from the power of it. And as soon as I experience that, it starts to subside, just like the speed did in the tunnel. It starts to go down a little, and I immediately recognize what's happening, and I holler out, no, don't stop. Give me all you got. And then I heard Jesus chuckle. And he starts to fill me up with his love from that point up until he knows that's as much as I can take right then. And it was so amazing, so amazing. There are several other things that happen at this same time. I enter the light enters me. I have immediate knowledge. This is God. This is Jesus. This is the way, the truth, and the life. This is the creator of everything. I knew that. I knew. Now, Janie, you know, as we've been talking, I knew no scripture. I knew no scripture. I had only been a Christian for all of 1 week now, but I knew in his presence, he was, as the word says, the way, the truth, and the life. And I knew it was unquestionably true. And I thought, I start then asking questions. I start asking him everything about him, about life, about philosophy, about everything on earth, all of creation. Millions of questions that I'm doing. And I'm asking him about them. And he's answering every single one of them, Janie. Every one. He didn't mind that at all. And the way, however, that he answers them is the same way that, in the same level of speed that everything else had been happening. When we ask a question here on earth, we ask it in a linear fashion. We've got one word after the next word, and then that completes a sentence, and that is one thought, blah, blah. You get the point. Mm-hmm. And so that's the way we send, and we also receive information. But that's not the way it is there. So when I ask a question, when you ask a question in the afterlife, and Jesus is giving you an answer, it is that as if he has already considered, thought of, and pulled together every tangential aspect related to everything. He gives you instantly an entire treatise that fully covers any possible aspect of the question that you're asking. When you ask him a question, you instantly get this entire volume of information, and your question is answered completely. And it really happens that. And so when I would ask another question, then bam, another answer, full. And I would ask and I would ask and I would ask question after question after question, and he would answer them. I was receiving complete libraries, plural, of information in answers to my questions. Now, and the more I asked them, the faster I asked them, and everything else. Then Jesus chuckled again. He thought that was cute. He loved, and he relished that I was so excited to ask, and he was filled with joy to answer them. It was so amazing. And so he chuckled again, and I asked all of these questions and all of these questions, and here's the answer to them all, Janie. It's Jesus. He's the ultimate answer to every single one of them. And there's no way you can separate Jesus out from it. It's not possible to do. And it's so amazing to see how that happens, to understand that. And so then I was struck there after that, and I thought, then that means everything about you is true. And I said, that means, or does that mean everything written in the Bible about you that's true too? And it was another question. And in that moment, Janie, I was transported through time and space right to the very front of the cross while Jesus was on that cross being crucified. And I was awestruck. And I can tell you just simply, when you see these little pristine golden crosses where you've got a Jesus hanging loosely, hanging there like there, and he's almost pristine. Then you may have a crown of thorns and maybe a little trickle of blood or something. That was not at all what happened. This man was beaten almost beyond recognition. It was so stunning to see just how much torture he was going through. And I'm sorry, this is going to happen again. It happens every time. I'm sorry.
No, it's totally fine. It's because for his love for us.
It was. And I'm standing there now. Look, I have all of these people. I know there are people around me. I had one person, one group had asked me in an interview one time, did you see Mary? And I said, I know she was there, but my focus was on Jesus and just on Jesus. I know that John was there, but my focus was on Jesus. And the story was about Jesus. And as I'm looking, I can actually, with me right there, I can actually hear his thoughts at that moment on the cross. And they were about me. And I knew at that very moment, as he was suffering, that if I was the only person in all of creation that ever would have said yes to him, it would have been right there on that cross. He'd have gone and done what he was doing just for me. And I was crushed, Janie. I was crushed. Not only, it's the weight of it because I knew more about me, or at least I thought I did. And I'm thinking like, oh no, who would do that for me? He did. And it was the truth, and I knew it was the truth. And I knew it was also true that he would do that for each and every other person as well. And he did. You know, some people like to try to limit Jesus, but he's God. And right now, he's omnipotent, omnipresent. There is no limitation to him. So to say that, well, he might be able to spend some time and be intimate with this one person, but he doesn't have the time to be able to do that. Yes, he does. He has the same amount of infiniteness to be intimate with you in a relationship, just like with me and everyone else. And my goodness, everyone, if you hear this, Jesus loves you so much more than you could ever possibly imagine. And yes, you can have that personal, intimate relationship with him. And I encourage you to do that today. So when I had that, at that moment, I came back and I asked more questions. Oh my goodness, I asked more and more questions, and he provided the answers. But then at that moment, I also noticed that the Father was there as well. That it wasn't just Jesus. Now, the difference is, while I could see Jesus, I couldn't make out a form for the Father. I knew he was there. I knew where he was. I could interact with him. I could talk to him. He's able to talk to me. There's all of that. I just can't see a form for him, right? And another thing that I thought, now this thought came after the fact, and that was, as I'm looking, Jesus is to my left, on the left-hand side, as I'm looking at him, and the Father is on my right-hand side. So what that means is Jesus was the right hand of the Father. And I thought, oh, okay, I get it. But it was absolutely true. And I thought, wow, it was one more confirmation, if you will, of the words in the Bible showing it is true. And so all of these little things, it wasn't kind of like some, oh, snap, that was clever. It wasn't that at all. It was a reality that showed the truth of his word. And I considered as I was looking around, then I was considering being in heaven and how wonderful it was and how much it felt like home, like I belonged there. And but then there was something that was deep down inside of me that I don't know, it just made me think, can I stay here? And I was thinking that to myself, not that they didn't hear me, but I mean, I think that I'm thinking that to myself, but then I directed it as a question to them. Can I stay? And they both, in perfect unison, said one word: no. And it was a loving no, but it was a firm no. Now, I didn't know why at that stage, but I knew that it was also true. But Jesus, when he said no, it would be like me talking to you now and him responding, right? But the voice of the Father, oh my goodness, was so powerful. It could crumble rocks. It could cause earthquakes. It could, it was just amazingly powerful. So much so that I thought about, again, this is after the fact, when you have all the people and God comes down on Mount Sinai and to talk to the people, and they can't hear him. It's too much. They think they're going to die from it. Yep, it's that powerful. I'm just like, oh, I get it. It again, it was a loving no, but it was just no. And I knew at that moment that I had to go back. And as soon as that realization came to me, I could feel myself starting to be pulled backwards out of the light. And I am so disappointed, Janie, at this stage, because I'm going like, I'm not wanting to go back. I don't think anybody who actually has this experience now, and I've had some persons talk about, didn't you think about your children or your wife? And yes, of course I did. But Jesus comes first. And I knew where they are going to be. There's no substitute for that. And I am not going to try to put them in a position that they don't belong. Jesus is at the top. And I loved my family so much, but there was nothing that was going to change. I knew I needed to go back. And so as much as I was already starting to feel homesick, there was nothing I could do about it. So I'm pulled back and I can feel myself and I'm pulled out and I'm heading back just opposite from the direction that I had come in. So I had come in head first through this tunnel opening. Now I was heading feet first backwards. So what I did is I turned myself over, just like a kid rolling over, right? So that I could see almost like a slalom what was going on. And I end up, feet go into the tunnel, and of course followed by the rest of me. And as soon as I enter the tunnel again, it's all back. There's this huge switch that takes place, and I'm back in space. In the tunnel. The tunnel is in space where I'm at anyway. And all of the angels, they're still all there. Oh. And they're still like chattering amongst themselves and still have this excitement with, oh, okay, all right, look, there he is. And I'm going back through there, and I'm going back just it's just like it was, excuse me, just opposite to the way I had come in. And so eventually what happens is I come out of the other end, out of the funnel from the other end, out into space, and I'm going past galaxies and into our solar system, and I'm watching planets go by, and 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 then right in front of me, directly in front of me, is the Earth, and it was stunningly beautiful from this vantage point. I have nothing blocking my vision. There's I don't need any type of enhancement, or there's no faceplate between me and seeing all of that. I can see this beautiful blue marble out in space, and it really was beautiful. And I'm thinking like, wow, I just captured this moment, and I thought I don't ever want to forget this. Of course, I haven't any part of it, but that's what's going on, and I'm still just heading towards the earth. As I come in, everything is opposite. Like I said, I can see going through cloud layers. I can see the mass of North America and the U.S., and I can see where Texas is and that sort of thing. And I'm coming in now again. As I'm listing this, it's taken a while, but it's happening super fast. But all of the detail stays there. You don't lose it. And so I come down as I get over where we are in Texas, and I'm coming in, and I'm seeing down as I'm going in. I see Linda. She's still sitting on the curb, and she's looking up, watching me come in. Now, this time though, I don't come down beside her. I come down over our house, and I enter in through the roof of the house. And every piece of detail is burned in, from the very grain on the shingles into the structure of the attic area, the pink insulation, everything, and going then through the ceiling and seeing this 1960s popcorn acoustic treatment that's on the wall. I see everything because it's going at eye level. I see it all. And then I look, and I'm over my body, and I'm coming in feet first. I see my body, and I enter in through my chest. And again, I'm going super fast. So what happens in this instant is there's this kind of adjustment, instantaneous adjustment and locking in, if you will, for lack of a better term, of my soul into this body. And as soon as that lock takes place, it happened with such force that my physical body is actually catapulted like in a rebound over the end of our bed out into the center of our bedroom. And I land, boom, with a thud, face down out in the middle of the room. Well, up to this point, of course, I could see Denise. She's still asleep there on the bed until that thud takes place. That woke her up. But I am immediately back in pain, but it's a different pain than I had. It's not at all like the elephant on the chest thing. This is like a burning, radiating pain. It's so completely different. You know, when something is healing, how a burn, you still have that tactile sensation, and it still lingers around, but it's not at all the pain caused from the initial event.
Interesting.
Well, that's what happens, and I've had some people say, and I think there might be some reason to think that this could be the case. Is why would that even happen? I had a person tell me once that I had gotten a spiritual cardiac thump, and
Ah.
start my heart back. And I thought, that might not, that might be pretty close because I actually hit directly on my chest, not on my face or anything else. I came straight down on my chest.
Ah.
Anyway, but I couldn't talk. I was, it was like my mouth is dry and I don't have the strength yet. So I'm trying to be able, I notice that Denise is awake. I'm trying to be able to catch her attention. So I try to turn around, crawl around so that I'm facing back towards the bed. And I think to myself, of course, at that time, I wasn't thinking too clearly. I think to myself, I can't say anything, but maybe I can, if I can just grab her foot off the end of the bed, then maybe I can catch her attention that way. Well, yeah, it worked, but uh, I didn't have any other thing that I could think to do at that point. So I had turned around and I crawled up, and I'd reached over the end of the bed up there and I grabbed her foot. And she lets out a shock, a start. And she likes that because obviously that was unexpected. And then she looks over and she's trying to look through the dark and she says, Wayne? And I said, I'm trying to think, what can I say? What can I say? I'm trying to gather up the strength to say the most important point. And I work it up, and with everything that I can muster, just kind of croak out, I just met God. And she just responds, "What?" She's not quite sure how to take that. And I'm thinking like, didn't she hear me? So I try to muster again the and say the same thing. I just met God. Now at that particular point, that was all I could do, and I just kind of collapsed there on the floor. I didn't have any strength left. And at that moment, she gets up and comes around and sits down beside me on the floor there by the bed, and she's not sure what's going on or what the problem is. But what ended up happening is that I was able slowly to start to tell her what happened, the whole story from end to end. And she didn't move. She didn't say anything until the end. And she tells me, she said, Wayne, I think you've had a heart attack. You need to go to the hospital. I need to call the ambulance right now. And while normally that might be the case, I had to use a little bit of man logic, I guess, or what I was trying to use, which was probably completely illogical at the moment. And I told her, I said, no, baby, no. And I said, I'll go later. I need to get some strength. And she said, but What if you have another heart attack and you die and you don't come back this time? And I said, baby, I don't think Jesus is going to have me go through all this and come all the way back just to have me go again. And she said, oh, okay. I said, if you will give me just about an hour and a half, because by this time that was about when the clinic was going to open up for our family doctor and I was going to go see him. I said, if you just let me do that, I promise you I'm going to go to the doctor. And she said, okay. And sure enough, I laid there to try, and I actually fell asleep too. I didn't even know if I could do that, but I did. And I woke up just in time an hour and a half later to be able to get dressed. And she said, "Do you need me to take you?" I said, "No, I can do it. It's okay. I can do this now." And so I drove myself down to our clinic, which is right at the hospital, and so that's where the next stage of this took place. Um, I ended up going in, uh, and of course, there's a lot of people that's already waiting in the waiting room. I have the nurse come up to me uh, and she asked if you can help. Can I help you? Of course, and I said yes. I had a heart attack and died last night, and I saw Jesus. And my wife wants the doctor to check me out. And she looked at me like I had slapped her in the face with a cold fish. And she said, "Oh, okay." And she wasn't quite sure how to respond. Now, of course, I knew that, but and she goes ahead and she quickly gets me in the on the docket there. And then she said, she gets over real close and she said, "Do you mind if I ask you what happened?" And I just kind of turned there. So we've got a counter. And I turned and I said, "No, I'm happy to tell you everything so I can do this with the whole audience of all of the persons that's in the waiting room, as well as her." And I begin to tell them everything about what's happened, right? Uh, and uh, and and so now about they try to get me really fast. There was a concern about a cardiac issue, and so they were getting me back pretty quick. But the nurse opens again, "Mr. Fowler, can you come back quickly?" And I'm saying, "Sure, I'll come back." And she, how they weigh you and do all the preliminary stuff, take your blood pressure and all that kind of thing. And she said, "I couldn't help hearing about what happened. Do you mind if you tell me a little bit more?" And now it's right past the door, so you can hear everything. And I said, "No, I don't mind at all." I'm trying to do it loud enough so that people can continue to hear what's going on. And so we walk up, then, of course, around, and there's the nurse's desk, and I continue talking. Now, of course, they could hear what was going on too. So I'm talking with them. I'm continuing to tell everyone. And about that time, then my doctor shows up with his physician's assistant, and so he's asking me. He said, "I'm hearing there's something pretty spectacular that happened to you, Mr. Fowler. Uh, do you mind if we go in?" So he wants to go into the room and be able to do the privacy thing. And so I'm saying, um, I tell him, believe it or not, I tell him the whole story. He is not moving anywhere. He wants to hear everything, and so he recognizes that, of course, he's wanting to be able to do an enzyme test, to be able to check my heart enzymes, and to be able to do electrocardiogram, to be able to check my heart, to do a stress test, all this battery of tests to be able to determine what has happened and what the condition of my heart is. So he's going to do a stat test to get the blood test back. We're doing all these other things as well. And so he goes to get the results from the enzyme test. And of course, we've done a couple of these other tests already. And while he's away, his physician's assistant then is asking more. She wants to close the door, but I'm saying, no, 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 let's leave the door open so that everybody else is able to hear what's going on. And so I'm telling her some further details and that sort of thing. And he, after 30 to 40 minutes, I guess, and he comes back and he's got his arms crossed and he's got this smirk on his face. And he said, well, Mr. Fowler, I've got some news for you. We got the blood test results that tend to show you've had a massive heart attack. He said, now, but we've got all these other tests that show there's absolutely nothing wrong with your heart.
Wow.
And I just kind of smiled and shook my head and knowingly. And he said then, as a follow-up to that, and I have to tell you, I believe you. And that's where it started from that particular point. I haven't stopped telling people from that day.
Now, I want to ask you this. Well, first of all, before we started taping, you were saying that you had this responsibility to make sure you didn't add anything or subtract anything from exactly what happened. And, I just thought that it's so real, and you wanted to make sure that it's glorifying God and not embellishing, and yet you remember all these amazing details. It's really, really incredible. But now I have a few questions. Do you have any theories on who Linda is?
You know what?
I have a theory, but I'm probably wrong, but go on.
Yeah, and the idea was when I came back, and I've had other persons ask about that. The short answer is no. At the time it happened, I knew her, and but the only thing that I can say is that she pointed me to Jesus. That's the one thing, that was what she was supposed to do. Point me to him. There's someone that wants to meet you. And she did that part. So for whatever part that was, however she's related or anything else, I still don't know. And maybe, I think just like everything else, everything has been and is so Jesus focused that I think that maybe the point of that is don't muddy the water, so to speak, by highlighting this person or that event and that sort of thing. Keep it all about Jesus. And I think that's the truth of it.
Well, Wayne, can you just pray for those who are watching who don't know the Lord, and a prayer for those who do know the Lord, but for those who don't, that they would know him?
I certainly will. It's a pleasure to do so. Thank you, Abba. I am so privileged to be able to give this testimony, which is truly the message of your son, Jesus. Jesus, we love you with every fiber in our being. And for those who do not, Lord, I'm asking that you give that desire to them in their heart to put you first, to love you with all of their heart, mind, soul, and strength. And then for those, look, if you've gone this far, and I hope that you have, that if you do not know Jesus, as your Lord and Savior, you are missing the most wonderful opportunity that will ever exist for you in this life. Jesus loves you with an infinite level of love, not just a little, infinitely. And if you would like to know this love, if you would like to know this Jesus, then I'm asking for you to believe that he is who he says he is. He is God the Son. He is the creator of all that is. And he is the only one who is qualified to be nailed to that cross, to die for your sin so that you will not be separated from God, from him. And this is so important. He died and he was buried and he rose again on the third day. And he offers you that free gift of salvation by just believing and trusting in what he says. I'm hoping that you will do that now. Do it now. Don't wait. Don't wait. The time is so short. And for those that do know Jesus, may this be a wake-up call. May this be an opportunity for you to turn full face towards Jesus, not to this world. Don't be distracted. Turn yourself to Jesus because the time is short. He's about to split the sky. I believe that. I believe that deeply. And I'm hoping that you will do that as well. I love you all, and I would like to thank you as a new brother and sister in Christ. And we ask all of this in the precious and mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
Steve Kang died and found himself in hell. Find out what Jesus told him there. Click the video to watch now.